Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. I figured we would do it live. Um, so let me just post this in a couple different places, and then we will jump in. Okay. So give me a second. Okay. All right. So we should be live. Look, Bitcoin has a pretty big test here. You guys know the drill, right? It's the same. It's the same thing as always. I know I sound like a broken record this far into the cycle, but the 20 week awaits, or the 21 week really. I mean the 21 week EMA is awaiting us at around $45,000. So you know it, I know it. That's where we got rejected on the wick. Bitcoin still looks relatively strong, so perhaps we can get a push above the 21 week EMA at a very modest 45K. So I want to talk about a few things in this stream, and then I'll take questions at the end. Um, you know, we'll just be somewhat candid about things, um, and um, yeah, we'll see where things take us. Let me see what's going on in the chat. Um, yeah, I mean, look, the Bears are trying to defend. The Bears are trying to defend the 21 week EMA, so of course they will try. All right, 44.5K. We'll see if we can break above it or not. Um, I mean, people always ask what my strategy is. You guys should know my strategy at this point. It's just DCA Bitcoin primarily when it's below the zero point 0.5 risk level. So that's what I do. Doesn't have to be what you do. Um, if you don't think it's going to get above this bull market support band, then I understand. I understand the skepticism, but it currently ranges from around 45K to around 49K. All right, so obviously getting above the 21 week EMA would be a good first step. The second step would be getting above the 20 week SMA, which is around $4,000 higher than the 21 week EMA. If we get rejected, you guys know what the downside risk is, right? We've talked about that plenty of times. So let's hope we get back above it and then furthermore hold it as support. I've also received a lot of questions about what would invalidate lengthening cycles, and I mean obviously we've talked about this since 2019. I put out a video on it a couple days ago, but in case you missed it, I mean it's a fair question. What would invalidate it? If Bitcoin just gets rejected here and ultimately just comes back down, um, and then we end up going below the fair value regression band and spending a lot of time there, I think it's fair to say that the lengthening cycle theory would be dead. Okay, so just to be completely candid, if we get rejected and we come down and then we get rejected again and then we come all the way down here and we do something like that, then clearly we're setting ourselves up for a new cycle. So I just wanted to answer that question because I've received a lot of those questions recently. Obviously, I made a video on it a couple days ago. There is a possibility that happens. I'm still holding out hope that the cycle will lengthen. But I did want to provide a little bit of commentary on that just because I've been asked about it a lot recently. But anyways, in the short term, we have at least had a couple of wicks off of the fair value logarithmic regression trend line. So we'll see if in fact we can push higher here. We went down to it at around 33K and then down to it again at around 34K. So pretty nice wicks down to the fair value regression line. Also, it was actually corresponded to going down to the corridor as well, right? We went down to the corridor on for this Bitcoin, or for the Bitcoin price chart. We went down to the bottom of the corridor for another time. So I mean, at least in the short term, we have some momentum. And now the question is, can the Bitcoin bulls, right, battle and get back above the bull market support band, which again ranges from around 45K to 49K. We're almost at the 21-week EMA. We just need to push a little bit higher and we'll be there. It's kind of crazy because Bitcoin's up around 18% on the week right now, which is actually a pretty substantial candle. I'm not even really sure the last time we went up 18% in a week. Obviously, the week's not over. We could always go back down, but we could also extend those gains as well. The last time we went up 18% was, in fact, in mid-February of 2021. So it's been over a year, I believe, unless I missed one of these candles. It looks like it's been over a year, I believe, since Bitcoin had an 18% return in one week, which is currently what we're at. So since February of 2021, you can see we're currently sitting at around 18% return. So you should know, right? Like, you should know if Bitcoin rallies back up here in this area, and if it does not immediately go parabolic or something, then altcoins can run. So be completely aware that, during this phase, we know that alts bleed against Bitcoin. Most altcoins, if you look where they were, where were they when Bitcoin dropped below the 20-week moving average? Most of those altcoins have bled against Bitcoin over the last 2 or 3 months. But a lot of those altcoins that bled against Bitcoin over the last few months, if Bitcoin gets back up here and it doesn't go parabolic, then those altcoins can rally against Bitcoin as long as Bitcoin stays back above there. That's why we follow the bull market support band so closely. And yeah, I know. So I was watching that earlier. If you go over to the Bitcoin rich list, whale number 3. Whoever our mysterious whale number 3 is, sold some Bitcoin earlier today. They sold 1,500 Bitcoin at around 43,985. The last time they bought Bitcoin was at 37K back in February 3rd. By the way, just for the record, just so you know, I mean, I know 1,500 Bitcoin, that's a lot of Bitcoin, but for this whale, it actually only represents approximately 1.2% of their entire stack. So they sold 1,500 Bitcoin, but they still hold over 125,000 Bitcoin. So yes, they did sell some, but it was approximately 1.2% of their stack. Probably the best way to sort of navigate this is to see what happens. What have they previously done? The last time they had, I mean, there was a 1 Bitcoin sell here, which they got right back. Do remember, though, these things aren't necessarily buying and selling. It could just be transferring Bitcoin from one wallet to another for whatever reason. It's hard to really say, but if you just take it at face value, the last time they moved 1,500 Bitcoin out was at 67K. But also do know they also, moved 1,500 Bitcoin out at 56K when we were in the process of moving higher to 69K. They also moved 33,000 Bitcoin out at around 50K and another 3,000 at 54K. So that, I mean, they tend to just occasionally take 1,500 to 3,000 Bitcoin out. But yeah, I did notice that they did take some profits. I mean, I check this almost daily now to see kind of like what they're doing, especially after their last sale at their last major sell at 67K, 67.5K. I thought it would be worth to follow to see what exactly they're doing. But someone says they sold the 1,500 to buy their new jet. Yeah, it's a lot of Bitcoin. It's a lot of Bitcoin for sure. Imagine selling 1,500 Bitcoin and it only being like 1% of your stack. That's what's hard to believe. Someone mentioned in one of the Telegram chat rooms that, like, if Bitcoin goes parabolic tomorrow, they're gonna really regret selling those 1,500 Bitcoin. And it's like, if Bitcoin does go parabolic tomorrow, I'm pretty sure this guy's gonna be fine, considering he still has $5.57 billion in Bitcoin. I'm not sure that he's going to miss those 1,500 Bitcoin if Bitcoin goes parabolic. So sometimes it's good to have a little bit of perspective on things, on what that actually represents of their stack. and is it a significant amount or not? And I mean, it's not really that much of an amount, but it is a substantial amount in that, someone would sell. It's just not for them. How did I get this indicator? I mean, you just go to bitinfocharts.com and you go over to the rich list. You click on Bitcoin rich list. You go down to the third wallet. It's whale number 3. The first 2 wallets is the Binance cold wallet and then the Bitfinex cold wallet. But look at whale number 3. They started buying Bitcoin back in 2019, and you can see they've been steadily. The blue line is corresponding to the primary y-axis, and you can see they've basically just been steadily accumulating Bitcoin for years and years and years. And actually they sold off a lot, it looks like, during this first rally up to 42K, but then they quickly continued to add more Bitcoin over the coming months. It slowed down a little bit going into this distribution phase over here, which is something I think that's worth paying attention to in the future. And ever since then, it's been moving up. So we're going to keep an eye on this whale to see, what in fact they do. Yeah, I have no idea who it belongs to. And I don't think it's MicroStrategy, because the amounts that MicroStrategy has reported have been different from this one. They are similar, but they're not. I mean, they're not the exact same. Where are we on the RSI? Yeah, we can take a look. So the weekly RSI is at around 48 or so, around 48. So the last time we were at these levels moving up was, back in the summer, right? The last time before that when we were at these levels was back in April of 2020 on the way up. So, I mean, look, guys, I always sort of approach this market with a healthy degree of caution and, thinking Bitcoin trends up with time over the macro scale, but always not really knowing what's going to happen in the short term. My speculation on the asset class actually going to 10 trillion, there's a good chance that won't. I mean, this is an optimistic scenario, right? Like, we could also not go to 10 trillion in 2023 either, but that would be my best guess. What it would be, it would happen in 2023, not 2022. It doesn't mean we can't see new all-time highs in 2022, but I think we still need a bit more time to make it there. But I mean, this is at least a start. We'll see if anything comes of this recent move back up to the bull market support band. So I mean, this is a pretty powerful move. You don't really see moves by Bitcoin this quickly that often. So I mean, the key thing, right, is to just DCA when the market is bearish, and then you can enjoy the market when it's bullish again. But you have to have the conviction, right? You have to have the conviction to DCA when it's bearish, or DCA in a downtrend. And not everyone likes DCAing in a downtrend. But I mean, that's sort of what you have to do, right? You just kind of have to say, well, don't know when it's going to turn back up. Whenever it does, you have your position ready to go. So yeah, how does the monthly not look like a double top from hell? Yeah, I mean, look, guys, I'll be completely honest. I have no problem admitting when I'm wrong. I've been wrong about plenty of things, and yeah, I mean, I missed this one, and so I think we need to be cautious here. I got a little bit overly deterministic over here at 69K. So yeah, I mean, it could potentially, I mean, look, even if Bitcoin puts in a new all-time high, it doesn't change the fact that we did have a double top in the short term. Okay, like, so even if Bitcoin does this, we'll still say, I mean, I still think this is a double top, even if we're able to ultimately prevail and move higher, which is what I would like to see. I mean, you guys know I have a lot riding on the lengthening cycle theory, so we'll see if it actually happens. But I do think it makes sense to be cautious until Bitcoin's at least, holding the 20-week SMA as support and then trending higher. Until then, we'll just have to wait and see if we can first break it. And we always worry about if it can hold it, but really, the key thing now is, can we even break above it? Let's worry about whether we can hold it or not, if and when we can actually break above it. Someone says a High-timeframe update. Yeah, I mean, so on the weekly time frame, remember on the smaller the time frame, the weaker the signal. So on a weekly time frame, we are green, but we were also green over here. On a 2 week time frame, we're green, and then the question is well, how often has the 2 week given a false signal, meaning you get one green 2 week Heikin-Ashi candle and you don't get another one? How often has that happened? Well, you'd have to go back a ways, I believe, because you don't see any over here. Um, You'd have to go back all the way to 2019. So the last time we only got one 2 week Heikin-Ashi candle in a row was all the way back in 2019. So then the question is well, what if we look at a longer time frame? You know, are there signals on a longer time frame? Remarkably, and by the way, this surprised me, the monthly Heikin-Ashi candle right now is green. Okay, it doesn't mean it's going to stay green, but it is green right now. And it also doesn't mean the 2 week's going to stay green either. Okay, because I mean, the 2 week still has 11 or 12 days to go. We still have a long way to go. So we want to keep an eye on it. But it is at least green right now. And the 1 month is green right now as well. And if it closes green, then you have to ask yourself, well, when was the last time we had a green monthly candle that was only a single one? And I'm not exactly sure the answer to that question. I mean, even over here, you had two in a row there as well. So I guess the answer is never. Actually, the first candle. I guess if you include the very first candle in Bitcoin's history over here, you had one green one and then you had a red one following it. So I guess that was the last time that Bitcoin had one green in a row without another green one to follow it. So right now that's where we're at on the Heikin-Ashi candles. Remember that we still have some time before those are actually going to actually close. Someone says, what is a lengthening cycle? Yeah, I mean, the general idea that we've talked about since like 2019, it's gotten a lot of hate, of course, but especially in the last few months. But the general idea is that every cycle has lasted longer than the previous one. And if you have a really long lengthened cycle, like the one I think we're in, if it is going to in fact last, another 12 to 18 months beyond the last cycle, then you're going to have periods of bull markets and bear markets, like sort of mini bull markets and mini bull markets and mini bear markets in the grand scheme of a longer market cycle. So I think one way to visualize that is to look at the extension from the 20-week moving average and sort of recognize that back in 2017, we just had one long continuous bull market followed by one long continuous bear market. And then this cycle, though, I've really tried to stress that you cannot assume that every bear market has to be some long, drawn-out crypto winter. It could just be a 3 to 6 month period. That's what we saw back in the summer of 2021. Maybe we'll see that here again. I said 3 to 6 months. It's been about 3 months so far. We're still not above it. So maybe we still have 3 more months to go. And then also, you can see that we've had, a bull market here, a brief bull market over here in 2019. We had a brief one here in 2020 and early 2021. We had a brief one in later 2021. So rather than just one long continuous bull market followed by one long continuous bear market, we've had mini bull markets and mini bear markets sort of mixed in between. And so I think it's important to recognize that. I mean, this is what we've said all along. Is it looks like a lot like 2013, where you have sort of this stretched out version of 2013. And when you have a stretched out version, I think a lot of people have underestimated just how far it can be stretched out. But look, I mean, if you take the there are definitely a lot of charts that suggest the cycle could go out a long time, right? Even out into 2023. I know that sounds absurd, right? I know it sounds absurd. It's always sounded absurd. And if Bitcoin gets rejected off the bull market support band and we go back down and we go back to the 200-week moving average, then clearly lengthening cycles is off the table. But if we hold the levels and push higher, then I mean, we'll put on our rally caps and we'll see you at higher prices. I just think I think that after getting rejected at 69K, we need to we need to be a bit more. And by when I say we, I mean I, right? I need to be a bit more humble on the approach here, um, because this was pretty brutal. So we'll just take it one day at a time and see if Bitcoin can actually get back above this level. This is a pretty critical level right here. Okay, and you can see that Bitcoin is somewhat struggling. I mean, honestly, it looks like there is a decent amount of momentum, but the bears are definitely trying to hold this off right now. Okay, there's people that do not, that probably have. I'm sure there's a lot of people that have a vested interest in Bitcoin not going above the 21-week EMA, probably because they're short on the market or something, and so they would prefer for Bitcoin to stay below the 21-week EMA, not go above it. So the bears are at least fighting right now. Hopefully the bulls prevail. Um, if the bull cycle is too long, considering the halving in early 2024, how long could the bear cycle last? Yeah, so it's a good question. This is a question I've received since 2019 as well. Is if the cycle extends, then does that affect the next bear market? Um, I don't necessarily think it has to, but I mean, you could see a longer bear market if it overlaps with the next halving. I mean, maybe it would curb the effects of the bear market. The alternative is if we just go into a long bear market now, then it just sets us up for the next halving. But if the lengthening cycle theory prevails, which is what I would prefer, then and you do see a market cycle peak. I guess it depends on when it occurs. I mean, if it occurs in late 2022, then you could theoretically still have a bear market in 2023 before the halving in 2024. But if the bull market ends in say if the market cycle ends in say mid 2023, and then you have a halving in early 2024, then maybe you either have a very brief bear market that's really, really brutal, or maybe you have a longer bear market that isn't as brutal because you're going through another halving and you're getting a supply shock. It's a good question. I mean, I obviously don't know the answer to it, but it is a good question to think about. A lot of people speculating on who whale number three is. I have no idea who whale number three is. Some people are saying it's the Federal Reserve. I don't know, but maybe, but I don't know. Someone asked, do I think this is a bear market? Look, I've said before, when we're below the 20 week, I think it's a bear market. And when we're above it, I think it's a bull market. And I don't think we're at the end of the cycle, right? I don't think we're going into necessarily into a crypto winter right now where we just go down for another year. But this market cycle has been filled with many bull markets and many bear markets. We've seen that since 2019. Again, bull market, bear market, bull market, bear market, bull market, bear market. We sort of oscillate, go back and forth, one to the other. Should we bet the family farm? I don't know that it ever makes sense to bet the family farm on crypto. As much as we want to see this thing go up, I don't think that makes sense to bet the family farm. Um, Sorry, we got some spammers in the chat. Someone says they don't even know who well number two, one and two are. Those are just a couple of different exchanges. Why would anyone in their right mind hold on to altcoins long term with the insane volatility? I mean, I think the reason, I mean, I hold some altcoins. The reason is because, I mean, if you buy them at relatively low prices and just let them sit for a few years, they can do relatively well if you can live through the major dips. I mean, it sucks, right? I mean, it sucks sometimes. I'm not gonna say that it doesn't. When you see altcoins drop 50%, 70%, 60%, whatever, even Ethereum, right? I mean, even Ethereum off of the prior high, Ethereum drops 56%. I mean, it sucks. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but the idea is that if you hold them for years and years and years, and you pick ones that stand the test of time, then you could be rewarded really well. This is what happened in 2019 and 2020. There's a lot of videos here on accumulating a lot of altcoins: Cardano, Chainlink, Avalanche, Polkadot, Matic in 2021. A lot. I mean, obviously Bitcoin and Ethereum as well. Look, I mean, a lot of altcoins won't stand the test of time. So you have to remember that, right? Like we have to constantly remind ourselves not to marry an altcoin as much as we want to. Like as much as we want to marry an altcoin because they have, the best fundamentals and the best community and blah blah blah. Don't marry an altcoin, right? If it's not performing, I'm not saying you need to go sell your alt, but I mean you could at least consider not adding to it anymore. It's this dangerous mindset that we get into, and I've gotten into it as well. I mean, I've gotten into those phases where, there's a certain altcoin, I like it underperforms, I still like it, I keep buying it, I watch everything else go up. So what I often do is I don't necessarily sell it, but I'll stop buying it, and I'll buy something that is performing a little bit better. Okay, and then I'll wait, and then if that altcoin really never shows signs of life, then eventually I will sell it. If it never really shows signs of life. But I sort of go through a process of buying it when I think it's undervalued, getting to a point where I stop buying it if all it ever does is bleed against Ethereum, and then eventually I will sell it if I stop seeing a future for it. So I mean, there's all sorts of investments we make. Some of them work out, some of them don't. Some of them work out for a while and then they stop working. You just kind of have to take what the market gives you and pick projects that you think will stand the test of time. I will say that, I mean, out of all the projects, the two safest ones are Bitcoin and ETH, in that order, by the way, in that order, Bitcoin and ETH in order of relative safety. So I certainly understand being heavy Bitcoin and heavy ETH and having a smaller position in altcoins. I do that myself. I recommend that, not financial advice, but that's what I prefer to do, is to have large positions in Bitcoin and ETH and a lot smaller positions in altcoins, not because I don't think altcoins are going to do well. It's just because I want to minimize my downside risk, right? I want to minimize my downside risk. And if I'm 90% altcoins and altcoins drop 90%, well, I mean, that's awful. Especially since some of them will never see a new all-time high. So I think it makes sense to be heavier Bitcoin and ETH because they do have less volatility. They give you better risk-adjusted returns over the macro scale, and then to have some altcoins, but not to be over-invested in altcoins, because we know how ugly it can get if Bitcoin, when Bitcoin gets the rug pulled out from underneath it. AVAX and Matic, which one is best? They're completely different projects. I don't know that we can compare. I mean, I don't know that you should really compare those two projects together. Have I looked at the difference between the 21-week EMA and the 20-week SMA from the perspective that we are in a market cycle as difference between them is considered? Does it indicate something? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, but perhaps we can go find out. So let's pull it up, and I'll unveil the curtain here. So we have PineScript down here. I'm going to change this to version 4 because I haven't figured out all the syntax to version 5 yet. I'm going to call this, what do I want to call it? Well, let me call it 20-week divided by 20-week SMA. Let's just call it dubious speculation. Okay, we'll just do that. Dubious speculation. And I think what we want to do is, sorry, I'm just going to pull up another tab really quick. I need to pull up the chat as well on this screen over here so I can see it a little bit better. But what I want to do, I'll just show you guys what I do when looking at this stuff. And so okay, so I'm going to change this to study, and we'll call it dubious speculation. So the question is there any reason to look at say like the extension of the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA? Like, does their extension tell us anything useful? So let's go find out, because I don't know. I mean, I don't always know the answer to these questions. So we'll set A equal to the 20-week SMA, and then we'll set B equal to the 21-week EMA. So hopefully you guys are following along. And then we'll say that C equals A divided by B, and then we'll plot C. But actually, yeah, we'll plot C. Let me see. I think this should work. There you go. So this is what this person has asked for, right? They said, is there anything useful about looking at the range at which the 20-week SMA and the 21-week EMA are apart from each other? So that's the code. It's super simple, right? Like it's super simple. It's not that complicated. That's how you do it. Let's go zoom out and see if there's anything to learn from this question. So we'll zoom all the way out, and what do we notice? Well, let's draw a couple lines and say, all right, well, at 1, we know that if it's at 1, then what? That means they're equal to each other. So let's draw a line at 1. If we're above 1, since it's the 20-week divided by the 21-week, if we're above 1, that means the 20-week is above the 21-week EMA, but also the reverse is true. So up here, the 20-week is greater than the 21-week EMA. Down here, the 21-week EMA is greater than the 20-week SMA. All right, so this is it. Anything useful to learn from it? Well, let's look at what happened in here, the summer lull. Anything useful about that? Well, we hit a, and we zoom in here, right? So this is where it peaked. Sort of had like a kind of a double peak right here. So it hit, the furthest extension at this point during that level, but then it also came down pretty far over here. The last time it was at those levels was, I mean, I guess it was just back over here when we were actually at the top. So maybe it's something to consider. But I mean, over here we actually went further than that beforehand. So I think the thing we'll just quickly look at we'll look at these major peaks. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Are anything going on? So this one, it marked a bottom. This one marked a bottom, local bottom, not a marked cycle bottom, but it marked a local bottom. What about this one? Yeah, not so much, right? I mean, again, not every indicator is perfect. It sort of marked a bottom. What happened though? What happened in this situation? We did see a rally. I mean, it's not, I mean, if you had bought here, you would have seen Bitcoin go up 70%. I mean, 70% is still 70% no matter how you slice it. 70% is 70%. So it went up 70%. Unfortunately, despite going up 70%, even if you had bought from that point, if you didn't sell on the 70% rally, you still had another 60% loss to come. By the way, I lived through that and I got completely wrecked. I mean, I got completely wrecked over here. So you can see this one led to a nice rally. This one led to a nice rally. This one led to a 70% rally, but it was short-lived, right? It was very short-lived. This one over here, same type of thing, right? You saw this extension reach a very high peak. After it, it led to a very brief rally, but it was short-lived, okay? Then we had one over here in 2021, and that one actually did lead to a rally. So one of the things we're noticing, though, one of the things we're noticing from this question is that usually when you see the 20-week SMA get that far extended from the 21-week EMA, you either see a local rally that takes you up maybe 40 or 50% or something, or you see a sustained rally that continues on the market cycle. Okay. There's no guarantees which one it's going to be. It could be, it could be a local, like a 2-week rally just to get everyone excited again, and then everything's going to dump, or it could lead into a more sustained rally. But you do note that whenever the 20-week SMA, whenever the ratio over the 21-week EMA is 1.16 or higher, you do at least see a local rally. Okay, that's just something to consider. There's also sort of mini peaks in here as well, and valleys. And I suppose the next thing we should look at would be sort of the low points. So if we go look at these, so you can see there's one here, there's one here, here as well, here, and here. So when looking at this, what do we notice? What do we notice when looking at all of these low points? Well, this one, it corresponded to the 42K top. And by the way, I know a lot of people sort of trolled back then when Bitcoin was sort of going through this parabolic move, and I was taking profits. I was selling some at 40K and 50K and 60K. I was selling some of it into like ETH because I thought ETH would go up, and it did. But you have to know that a lot of long-term holders were in fact selling even at 42K. Even by the way, even whale number 3 took a lot of profits out right during that drop. Actually, it looks like they took some out maybe near the bottom, but after that sort of initial distribution phase before it ultimately continued higher. That's just something to consider. So at 42K was the last one that was all the way down here, and then you had one at this level, which actually marked the sort of the breakout point for the 2019 rally. Then you had one at the top of 2017, you had one at the top of 2013, one at the top of mid 2013 peak, and then a couple more. So one of the things you note, though, again, no indicator's perfect, all right? I mean, let's not pretend like they are. But one thing you do note is that every major market cycle top, exhibit A here, exhibit B, not even market cycle top, any of these blow off phases, A, B, C, not in order, but D up here, all of them corresponded to the 21-week EMA, to the 20-week estimate divided by 21-week EMA, corresponded to a ratio of 0.87 or less. 0.87 or less. Interesting. So, it was an interesting question, right? And I do think I have a video on my channel somewhere where we talk about this. But it is an interesting question. Since we have it up, well, we could also look at other things. Right? I mean, we can look at other things. Like we could go look at the 100-week divided by the 200-week SMA. So why don't we go do that? I'll need to change this to an SMA. Add to chart. See, and this is one of those things that it's always interesting to look at because you see that diminished volatility over the macro scale, right? It's clear as day when you just look at, say, like the extension of the 100, the ratio of the 100-week moving average divided by the 200-week moving average, right? Like we've seen this many times before. But one of the interesting things about this chart is that what's more interesting is taking the time derivative of it and seeing where it changes from being convex to being concave. Changing from convex to being concave down at these sort of like inflection points. That's what's more interesting, I think. Okay, because when it changes from being concave down to being convex, that tends to be a great opportunity, like maybe a generational opportunity, right? For us, right, 3, 4, 5 years is like a generational thing, right? But then when it sort of switches back the other way, it's time to take profits historically, right? It's time to take profits. Again, here, it doesn't always mark the bottom, but the bottom occurred a long time before this, but it still wasn't a bad time to accumulate. So it is just something to keep in mind. Here, it's actually getting all wacky because it sort of started to roll over, and then it started to go back up, and then it started to roll over again. And if we go back up, it's just going to keep going back up. So this one, it hasn't been as useful as I thought it was going to be, just because the price action of this market cycle has been unlike anything we've seen before in Bitcoin, where it basically has just gone sideways between 30 and 60K for a year after a significant rally of like 10 to 20x. So this is all out of whack. What is interesting though is by the time it really gets up close to the peak. So if you look at this peak here, it corresponded to getting really close to this line. Okay, that was when the peak occurred. Okay, so right here, I can draw a straight line, but right in this area is actually where the peak occurred. So on this chart, the 69K level was all the way back over here. It was all the way over here. So perhaps there's some hope. I mean, there's always some hope, right? That the lengthening cycles will ultimately prevail. And if it does, I mean, what you would see is that you would see this slowly continue up, and then we would get some type of peak going into it, and then it would sort of roll back over. But it's an interesting idea. The great thing about this is you can also do all sorts of stuff, right? You can take like A divided by B divided by B. So you're taking the 100-week SMA divided by the 200-week SMA squared and seeing if that's worth anything. It's not worth a thing. Who cares about it? So you quickly move on to something else. So it's just something interesting that you can do. There's all sorts of stuff you can do in PineScript. So hopefully you guys find it useful. All right, next question. Hypothetically, if you had taken profits at the prior high and maybe DCA during the past few dips, would you be buying, selling, or holding? Well, I mean, I did not take profits at 69K. I have been buying for the last, basically for the last 3 months, especially since we dropped below the bull market support band. So I really started to buy again when Bitcoin dropped below 50K back over here. And it's been kind of all over the place. So, I mean, my cost basis right now on these DCAs is, I mean, my overall cost basis on all my Bitcoin is lower because, of course, I bought Bitcoin over here, and then I also bought a lot of Bitcoin back over here. But my cost basis on my most recent buys is still, it might be getting close to break even, I think. But it's not, I don't think it's actually green yet. So no, I'm not selling right now. I mean, obviously in hindsight, if we get rejected, you could argue I should. But I'm not really playing that game. I'm completely fine. I mean, as cliche as it sounds, right? I'm completely fine with whatever. I mean, if it goes down for a while and then we come back up, I'm fine just kind of blindly DCing through that. Not everyone buys that strategy. Sort of the same strategy I carried out in 2019, which was also just as brutal, if not more brutal than what we just saw. But that's the strategy I do. And it's not for everyone. I don't claim that it is, but it's what I do. Let me see what questions they are. When do I think Bitcoin is going to start decoupling from the general market? It's actually a good question. I mean, recently Bitcoin has somewhat decoupled from it. I mean, it's hard to know how long it's going to be sustained for, but if we just pull up, if we pull up the NASDAQ here and we pin it to a new scale, and we sort of look at what's sort of happening, you can see, and we'll go over to the daily time frame. What's interesting is that the NASDAQ has moved down recently while Bitcoin has in fact been moving up. So we are seeing some type of divergence here, right? The NASDAQ moved down, Bitcoin moved up, which we haven't seen for a while, right? For the last several months, these asset classes have been very much correlated. Remember, I mean, things can be correlated for a while and then not correlated. The one thing, though, that I think is something we would like to see, otherwise it would be somewhat concerning, if Bitcoin pumps to, let's say, 50K or 55K, and the NASDAQ is just in a downtrend, it's kind of hard for me to buy that Bitcoin would go to 100K if tech stocks in general are in a downtrend. I don't say that as saying like it can't happen. I would love for it to happen. It's just that historically, every time Bitcoin put in a market cycle peak, it corresponded to the Nasdaq being in a very much macro uptrend. Like in December of 2017, the Nasdaq was in a macro uptrend during that time. In December of 2013 as well. If we go to December 2013, right here, the Nasdaq was in an uptrend too. So I think we would have a lot less. We would have a lot less headwinds ahead of us if the Nasdaq and the stock market in general could start moving up. It is a little concerning that the Nasdaq is still at 14,000 and the S&P is at 4,300 or so. But we'll see if they can actually pick back up. Until then, I mean, at least in the last couple of days, they have at least somewhat decoupled. I mean, that's just what the chart shows. Yeah, tech hasn't been doing well for a while. All right, what other questions do we have? Can we look over some of the on-chain data? Yeah, we can take a quick look at it. So, by the way, we do have a sale here on this website, Into the Cryptoverse. So check it out, intothecryptoverse.com. On-chain data, social media charts. These are actually really interesting. Derivative charts, ROI charts, survey, so yeah, I think, by the way, I wanted to clear something up because I saw something going around Twitter earlier. And that is I believe it's the address count statistics. So if we go look at the number of addresses that hold at least 1,000 Bitcoin, we actually saw this, shoot up recently by a lot, right? It shot up a lot. But I think what we found out when digging, well, not what I found out, what someone else found out, was that it was just some custodian moving Bitcoin around, but it was not actually representative of like, a lot of new money coming into the market, but it was actually just people moving Bitcoin around. So sometimes on-chain stuff can be a bit misleading if people are just sort of moving stuff around. Yeah, unwrapping Bitcoin. Data provided by Coin Metrics for this stuff. You can look at the HODL waves. It's interesting. It's kind of interesting to like sort it by like 6 months to 1 year on the HODL waves and kind of see what trends there are and say, okay, historically when we were in downtrends, what did it mean? Like in this downtrend, it was actually leading into a bull market. In this downtrend, we were sort of finalizing the last part of the bear market. Same thing over here in this downtrend, we were finalizing the last part of a bear market. We're currently in a downtrend. We've been in it for a while. Clearly, Bitcoin has been bearish for a while. I mean, a lot of statistics show that, not just on-chain stuff. Even if you go look at things like the weekly RSI, it's one of those weird things where like, we technically put in a new all-time high, but a lot of indicators have been relatively weak over, even though we put in a new all-time high. Like the weekly RSI back in April was at like 94, but at 69K, it was only at like 68, which is why, this sort of second top didn't seem as obvious to me at the time. But I mean, that's it. It is what it is. Going up to around $69,000, and we put in a lower high on the weekly RSI. Here it is for ETH. Here's the MVRV Z score. Or no, this is the MVRV. It was the MVRV Z score. See, this is one that didn't really make it to the higher risk, to higher levels. The risk metric did on the first peak, but this one did not. I mean, it made it to over 6, so perhaps that was, maybe someone should have argued that was more significant, but it didn't actually make it up to above 8, where it had previously made it to. Or really, it had always previously made it to like 9 or so, or at least like close to 9. All right. Yeah, guys. I mean, look, Chainlink has just. I mean, look. The truth is, it's just underperformed for a long time. I'm not. I mean, there's no really other way to say it. You know, when we started this cycle back when everything was trading for a lot less. You know, I mean, again, all this stuff can be verified by looking at the older videos. We were talking about ADA at 2 cents, Chainlink at $1 to $2, Polkadot at $3. Avalanche at like $10, and Ethereum at 1 to 200, and then Bitcoin at 3 to 4,000. Look, the reason why I picked very few coins was so that, look, if some of them don't perform as well as others, there's really nowhere to hide, right? Like, you just kind of have to own up to it. And I mean, look, Chainlink did go from like $1 to $20, which is great. I mean, it's great, but I mean, come on, like, it hasn't really done a whole lot since then, and considering that Link is at $15, despite the fact that it was literally at this price back in August of 2020, before the parabolic crypto rally, that is kind of ridiculous, right? It's kind of ridiculous that it's still at the same price it was back in the summer of 2020, despite the fact that the entire market more or less went parabolic. So, you know, I mean, it sucks. It is what it is. Hopefully it picks back up steam. You know, this is one of those cryptocurrencies that I used to DCA a lot. I haven't bought it in a while. I still have a position in it. I still have my original position. I haven't sold it, but I haven't bought it in a while. And the reason is because, you know, I mean, it's just bled against Ethereum forever, right? I mean, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to just DCA it into oblivion? I maybe we'll put in a double bottom, but I mean, we could have just been claiming that forever. So I don't know. I mean, I think that what I'm doing with Chainlink is I'm sitting on it and hoping that it comes through in the clutch one day, but it hasn't come through in a couple of years at this point. So we'll see what happens. Yeah, people always say that means it's past due for a pump. Hopefully you're right, right? Like, hopefully you're right. I also thought it was past due for a pump a year ago, and here we are, still Chainlink still chilling at $15. So um, at some point you just sort of have to say, well, I don't know if it's past due for a pump or not, but it hasn't pumped yet, so, or at least not in 2 years. Not, I mean, it has gone to 50 something dollars. So I mean, I don't want to detract from it, but compared to the rest of the asset class, it hasn't done much. Um, am I gonna play the Doge game this time? No, no. Yeah, I was actually looking at Solana recently. To be completely honest, I missed the boat on Solana, but I do have a small position that's actually currently down right now. But from the prior all-time high, the Solana Bitcoin valuation is actually currently down about 42% or so. Um, so it's interesting. It's interesting to look at for sure. I mean, because if Bitcoin gets back above its bull marks warp and can hold those levels for a while, we might can see Solana actually make another move higher. But I don't want people to, to look at this market and say anything has to happen. Because if we get rejected, we can just go straight back down, and then altcoins would bleed out against Bitcoin again. So I would say be cautiously optimistic and say, all right, look, we want to get above the bull market support band. If we do, we know altcoins can rally. If we don't, altcoins will just continue to bleed. Matic has done pretty well. So if we go look at the Matic Ether valuation, I like to measure Matic. Actually, let me go to a different one. So Matic ETH. So this one has actually been doing relatively well. I mean, it had a pretty long uptrend, and then rather going into a long downtrend, it's more or less just been going sideways since about May of 2021. So this is a cryptocurrency I do hold, in fact, and hopefully we'll see this break out eventually to the upside. What other questions? It's getting pretty late here. I should probably go soon. Yeah, I am tired. It's been a long day. Um, someone says this market cycle is just buy VC coins. I mean, I guess the evidence has. You're not wrong, right? Based on some of the price action we've seen. What happened to DOT? An interesting thing about DOT, by the way, is that if Bitcoin does get back above its bull market support band, remember that DOT actually started its rally on July 26th, which was actually right before Bitcoin got above its bull market support band. So I don't know. I mean, I still have my old position in Polkadot. So we'll see. I mean, really Polkadot tends to act like a more volatile version of Bitcoin. So let me show you what I mean. So like if you, let me move this to a different scale. Like look at Polkadot and Bitcoin. Like look at these projects. Like it basically is just it just acts as a more volatile version of Bitcoin. Yeah, make sure you guys subscribe if you're not subscribed and give the video a thumbs up. All right, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We'll see if Bitcoin can push past its bull market support band here over the coming days, and if we can, then we have to start thinking, will it hold as support or not? So a long way to go for us to have the a little bit more confidence in the market, but we'll see what happens. Ugh. All right, guys.